All right, welcome to the first ever episode of Friday Live, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's our new weekly live video series. We're coming to you right now from the Hodinkee headquarters in New York City. Every week we'll be coming to you either from here or from wherever our team of editors are somewhere around the globe. I'm Stephen Pulver and I'm the managing editor of Hodinkee.
And I'm Cara Barrett, editor at Hodinkee.
And we're going to start off, like we're going to start off every week, just by kind of looking back at where we've been this week, what we've been doing, and what you should make sure you don't miss from the site. So earlier this week, Cara was able to stop by Philips here in New York and get an early look at the upcoming auction preview. Can you tell us a little bit?
Yeah, we saw some great pieces. We went down on Monday and we were able to go hands-on with their incredible highlights. One of them was the Bow Die, which a lot of people have been talking about. It's a 6062 Rolex, yellow gold with black dial, diamond indexes. It's a very unusual and unique combination. The diamond indexes are actually on the even hours rather than the odd hours, which you may have seen before. It also was used to belong to Bow Die, the last emperor of Vietnam, and he bought it in 1954. And if you don't know, the 6062 was actually only produced between 1950 and 1953 in less than 500 pieces. So it's incredibly rare. It's only come up at auction one time before in 2002 and sold for $235,000, which was the most expensive Rolex sold at auction at that time. So it's in incredible condition. It's barely been touched, and we're really excited about it. The estimate is over $1.5 million. And we're thinking that it's probably going to end up in the $3 to $5 million range. We actually have some bets going on at the office. So
I'm thinking a little higher than that. Maybe.
Yeah?
Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, it's kind of tough, but we're really excited to see how that does. Another highlight was the 530, which is a Patek Philippe chronograph made in 1949. This is a really rare reference. You don't see them very often. It's the next step after the reference 130, which was 34 millimeters. And then the reference 530 is 36.5, so that was really huge for the time. This one's in yellow gold with brigade numerals. It's a really rare combination, and it's in incredible condition. I mean, the case is so thick. It's amazing to see in person. Usually they're really overly polished, and they're just not that great. So we're really excited about that one too. And then there's the 2597, which Ben wrote about earlier this week. It's a personal favorite of mine. The travel time. The hour jumps forward and back with the click of a button, and it's just a really awesome watch to see in person. So.
Yeah, and that's inspired some modern watches too, right?
Yes, it has. It inspired the Laurent Ferrier travel time,
right.
And so Louis Cartier design case. So,
cool.
Yeah.
And when does that preview open?
The preview opens this weekend, I believe, in New York.
Great.
But yeah, so.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should definitely stop by if you get a chance. There's a lot of really amazing watches, and we're going to have coverage of that for you over the next couple weeks leading up to the sale, so you get a better sense of what that looks like. Yeah. Last week I was actually at the Montblanc and Minerva manufacturers in Switzerland, and ran a story this week of one of the coolest things I've ever seen at a watch manufacturer. Minerva has this amazing history, and they've really done a great job preserving it. So there was this big wooden cabinet just kind of sitting in the middle of a room near their museum. And it was filled with thousands of new old stock components, everything from base plates to dial mounting components to chronograph levers to the coolest thing, which were hundreds, if not thousands, of new old stock Gramfou enamel dials from Minerva chronographs and pocket watches. You would never be able to find this many Gramfou enamel dials anywhere nowadays. There's just not the infrastructure to make them. So seeing them all in this one place was really amazing. It was like a little time capsule of the history of watchmaking.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And one of my other favorite stories from the site this week was something Jack actually wrote, which was about this thing called the Compass camera, which was this tiny mechanical camera made in the 1930s. And it was actually made by Jaeger-LeCoultre, and it fits inside of a pack of cigarettes. And it's a fully mechanical camera. So you should go check that out. It's not a watch, but it's really amazing to see how watchmaking technology can be harnessed to create this kind of idiosyncratic, strange little object. And the man who designed it is a bit of a character, to say the least. So Jack gets into that a little bit too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are kind of the highlights from this past week.
Yeah.
Was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Oh, the overseas, the Vacheron,
Yeah.
the 37 millimeter. They came out with the overseas from last year in 37 millimeters with no diamonds last year, if you remember.
And no date window.
And no date window, yes. Sub-seconds at 9 o'clock. Yeah. Comes in a rose dial, blue dial. It's just really clean. And the previous overseas was 41 millimeters. So this is a really welcome size for a lot of people.
And the 41's not going anywhere.
No,
this is just another option.
Still around.
Great.
This is just another option. More watches for more people. So
perfect.
Yeah.
So as promised, we have a special guest for this week. We thought we'd kick things off kind of with a bang. So I'd like to introduce the new CEO of IWC, Chris Grainger.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming. You're in town for the Tribeca Film Festival, right?
Absolutely, yes. Correct.
Great. So a bit of a late night last night at the celebration,
yeah.
but
excuse my voice this morning.
No problem. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, welcome. So you've been at IWC now for a few months, and what have been some of the highlights for you?
Well, I've been with IWC for 10 years.
That's
so
right. Yeah.
in my new fluent transition job for a couple of months. So yeah, it's been very, very exciting, I think, to finally get to do all the other elements of the IWC experience as well, which I haven't done before. We had a very exciting launch at SIHH of the Da Vinci collection, which is our female launch plus the Da Vinci complications. Great event in Geneva, and that was good fun. And then now in the run up to actually opening our new manufacturing center this year in Schaffhausen, which is also very exciting. You should come to that. You know, we have a 10,000 square meter new facility, completely designed from the ground up, you know, really to represent state-of-the-art watchmaking, meeting modern technology, and that's all set in a kind of exhibition pavilion kind of architecture, which is very luxurious. You're going to have this 9-meter ceiling height entrance hall, and it's floating above the ground, the entire thing. So very, very excited to open that in October this year.
Great.
And it's going to be great for visitors as well. State-of-the-art interaction with all the watchmakers, so it's going to be a real highlight.
And that's kind of your background. You come from a design and architecture background,
correct,
which is pretty unique amongst watch CEOs.
Yeah.
How do you think that impacts how you approach your job, and how maybe you might approach it a little bit differently than some of your colleagues?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, essentially in our business, you have an aesthetic vision for a brand that people fall in love with, and that really defines everything you do with a watch brand. And having an aesthetic and design background really helps to have that clear vision where you want to take the brand. So since most of the decisions we take are somehow aesthetically informed, I think it's a real strength to be able to have that background and understand what the brand is about. And I think that's what our clients appreciate and what makes a difference every day. So it's important, of course, to have all your management teams, your operations in place. But at the end of the day, what you need to have is the vision for where the brand is going. And I think a creative background is a strength when it comes to that. So, yeah.
Great. And in addition to this identity that kind of carries through across the different lines, you mentioned a new manufacturing facility, and IWC has been kind of pushing on in-house movements over the last few years, and we've seen move phases, we've seen chronographs, we've seen tourbillons, but those movements are mostly making their way into the higher end pieces, and the more entry level pieces, the basic pilots, the basic Da Vinci, are still using Sellita movements. And I wonder what the strategy is there about having kind of in-house movements in the higher end pieces and Sellitas in the more entry level pieces, and whether you think the people just getting into the brand or who are interested in those pieces care that they're not getting an IWC in-house movement.
Well, firstly, I'd say that IWC is a full manufacturer, and we show the entire range when you come to Schaffhausen. We have all of those elements from case making to movement part making, component making, and movement making in-house. But we've also always had a very broad price point range and a very broad portfolio, and we're trying to offer the best possible product and the nicest product at a fair price for all our clients across the entire spectrum. So I think it makes sense to have access products that give access to the brand and have a very attractive price point with good design and all the rest of it. And at the same time, having the full range of complications for people over time who get into the brand, who like to have more complications, more functions, to be able to have more elaborate movements as well. But this is filtering through now because, as you know, with the Ingenieur, we just launched the 69 caliber in-house chronograph, which we're making in the new facility in Schaffhausen. And this will be broadening that range of price points at a chronograph level as well, to have more and more in-house, and also have that on volume products. So I think it's a strategy where we have to make sure that we offer the best possible quality across all the price points and across the entire portfolio. And I would call it's an integrated strategy.
Okay. Yeah, and the lineup is pretty diverse. I mean, even just the watches we have in front of us here. I mean, we have a Portuguese Portuguese. We have the Da Vinci with the moon phase. We have a Mark 18.
Yeah.
We have a new Portofino moon phase that you'll be hearing more about very soon.
Yeah.
And then we have the Da Vinci perpetual calendar chronograph.
Yeah.
So it's a very diverse range of watches. And I wonder how you tackle kind of having such a diverse range while also communicating kind of a coherent vision and kind of aesthetic vision.
I think one of the things about IWC, it's not a monoproduct brand. You know, we've always had 6 very well-established product lines, many of which have their heritage all the way back to the mid-1930s, and they've been established ever since, you know, even the engineer from the mid-1950s, etc. So I think we've always had that in our brand, and it's part of IWC that you're not done with one design. Once you bought the Portuguese, you bought the brand, you've had it. You know, you always need more than one IWC, and I often get asked that question, well, which one have you picked? And you know, I wear so many different watches all the time because there's so much more to IWC than just that one design style. Now, for us, the fundamental question is always, is a design iconically IWC or not? So there's something in the purity of the design, in the simplicity, and it's kind of got a modern timelessness to it, and that needs to be the case for it to qualify to be an IWC, basically. But we want to make sure that we offer watches from everything to from a sports style watch, you know, for very active people in the aqua timer or some of the ingenieurs, to sports classic, to really classic elegant. Now, obviously, in the male and female ranges as well. So this year, as you saw, we launched the 36mm Da Vinci, which is a slightly more formal version of the female line of IWC that complements the Portofino 37 we launched a couple of years ago. And there again, we find every time this is opening up slightly new ranges of clients that are coming into the brand that are falling in love with a particular style of product, but essentially they're still always IWCs, and that for me is the judging point. You know, it has to be on brand, and it has to feel right in the portfolio. But within those parameters, you want to be diverse, and you want to offer different styles of watches, more formal, more sporty watches, to really have a full portfolio offering.
Great.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, and we can talk, I think, about the Da Vinci for a minute. I think, you know, for our readership, the Portugueser and the Pilot's Ranger are like these really iconic, amazing pieces with tons of history. It's kind of easy to fall in love with. I think the Da Vinci requires a little more explanation and maybe isn't quite as evident. And then also the Da Vinci went through kind of a big overhaul this year. The case shape has changed. It's gone back to that more 1980s with the fancy lugs, the really beautiful numerals. How do you approach a collection like this that's maybe not quite as easy an explanation as something like the Pilot's collection?
Well, again, I think that you have to see the global picture a little bit there as well, because in different countries you have different clients that are used to certain parts of the IWC collection historically. So yes, from an American perspective, I totally get it that you approach the brand from the Pilot's angle, but if you look at our Swiss customers, especially the ones that have been with the brand for a longer time, they have very strong feeling that IWC is Da Vinci. And you can see the uptake of that collection in countries like Switzerland is immediate, because people recognize that style that we have in the mid-1980s when Kurt Glass developed the perpetual calendar on the Da Vinci, and people still associate the brand very strongly with that design.
Interesting.
So, you know, depending on where you are, you know, in Asia this is something that's very well received as a smaller female line which complements the Portofino 37. And then maybe in America, where you have a more sports outdoor market for watches, slightly bigger cases, and you have more of that instrument watch look that people associate with IWC. Yes, it's maybe a little bit of a bigger jump to understand how the Da Vinci sits in the portfolio, but globally I think it's a very natural extension, because it's a more classic design that complements the Portuguese on the classical end. And on the ladies' watch side, it is a slightly more formal version of that ladies' watch as an interpretation. And so I think it now sits within the collection really well, and you can put the different collections side by side, and it is complementary to what we already have in the portfolio. And you're right, it's based on that mid-1980s round watch design of that time when we introduced the perpetual calendar. And it gives us an option now with those moving lugs to have an ergonomically completely different fit to the watch from what we were able to offer in the previous collection. So far, I'm very, very happy with the feedback and with the results.
Great.
I, for one, was really impressed by the Da Vinci at
Great.
SIHH. And I initially didn't know if I would be really into it, but when I tried it on,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
really is changing.
For us, SIHH is a wonderful moment because, we look at these watches very much sort of on the table, in product development studios as we have it here now. And then at SIHH, it's the first time when all our female friends of the brand, clients come in, and you suddenly see the watches on wrist.
Yeah.
And that completely changes your perception
does.
because suddenly you think, wow, it looks great, because people come in, same last night at Tribeca, people come in wearing the Da Vinci and you think, wow, it looks amazing. And then that's always for us when the product really comes to life, then when you see it worn for the first time.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This is a really amazing way to kick this off, and definitely tune in next week. Next week we have a couple big things coming to the site. There will be some big news for the site itself on Tuesday, and we're also going to have a new episode of Talking Watches that you're not going to want to miss. And we'll be right here next Friday talking about all of those things. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.